You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
This is TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network, a weekly audio safari that features the newest in paranormal discoveries while highlighting the latest and not to be missed TruthFunder.com projects. For truth seekers and true believers, this week's TruthFunders starts now.
Greetings, bonjour, welcome everybody to TruthFunders Radio. This is Mark Schwartz, I'm the CEO of TruthFunders, and usually with me as always is Art, but it appears that Art is nowhere to be found. He is somewhere lost in the abyss today, and I think Art started a new job today, so he should be here, but he might be driving home and stuck in some torrential Los Angeles traffic because everybody knows how bad traffic is in LA. When I tried to call his phone, it went straight to voicemail, so I know that he's probably freaking out somewhere wherever he is trying to get to the show, and in the meantime, I'm here freaking out because he's not here at the show. But regardless of all that, he might join us at any time. He might show up and just pop in half an hour into the show. Maybe he doesn't show up. I would love it if he did. If you're out there, Art, please join us. But we're just going to rock it and roll it because we have an incredible show for you today. I mean, this show is just, it's going to be like nothing we've ever done before. And we're going to be talking to world-renowned geologist David Schwartz from the United States Geological Survey, better known as the USGS, and we're going to be talking to him about all sorts of things, like the different myths that are out there. Can people actually predict earthquakes? Will California fall into the ocean? And, when is the next big one going to hit California or the rest of the world? And can earthquakes open up in the ground and swallow you whole? What's going on? We're also going to be asking some special questions about space weather. And I know a lot of you out there, you may follow Suspicious Observer. He is online. He has a YouTube channel with 500,000 to 1 million people following him. He does these daily reports about space weather and how it impacts the Earth and geology. And so we might touch on that a little bit. We also might have him on next week to talk about his side of things and what he thinks is going on. But tonight we have mainstream science. We have fantastic science because even though stuff might be quote unquote mainstream, it is completely exciting and it is really important and it's very, very accurate. I mean, think about it. These guys and scientists who have studied geology or space or any kind of science, biology, they've studied it their whole entire lives. Out of here, dog, out of here. The TruthFunders mascot is shaking right now, and so I'm kicking him out of the office. So yeah, it doesn't matter. If you study this, you know it a lot more than people who just have ideas or think, oh, well, it must be a conspiracy. I mean, some of that stuff is definitely true, and we do cover it here on TruthFunders Radio, and we do like to uncover it. But it's also important to hear both sides of the coin. So the real science and then the other science that is real science, but might be done by not as, I don't know. There's stuff everywhere. There's science everywhere, and there's people. There's studying astronomy by themselves, and then there's people who learn it and are schooled in the classrooms and have studied it and go on to do more with it. Does one know more than the other? Well, probably. However, this is a classroom, and so we want to learn, and we want you to learn here on TruthFunders Radio, and to make the decisions for yourself. How do you feel about it? So I am really, really excited to bring on Dr. David Schwartz. Like I said, he is from the USGS. He is a geologist and works in Menlo Park, California. He also has been on 60 Minutes. He's been on the National Geographic. He's been in the National Geographic. They've actually written about his study. He has been on the Discovery Channel, and I actually worked with him on a program on the Discovery Channel. I was an assistant to the cameraman at that point, and Mr. Schwartz, Dr. Schwartz, was the main focus of that particular documentary, and it was about building the bridge in San Francisco. So now, without further delay, I want to bring on Dr. David Schwartz. Hello, David. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well, and I'm very happy to be on the show.
Well, we are extremely excited to have you. And I apologize that our co-host isn't here today, but I'm going to go ahead and take the reins, and we are going to rock it and roll it. And so, David, would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself or about your background and how you started to find your love of geology? Where did that come from?
Well, I grew up in New York, and my grandfather used to take me to the American Museum of Natural History when I was a little kid. And I got hooked on dinosaurs and fossils and rocks and minerals, and they had rooms of Arctic and Antarctic exploration, and it was just very, very exciting. And I took an earth science course in high school, and then when I got to college, I decided to major in geology, and I never looked back. I went ahead, I got a master's, I got a PhD, and I've been doing this professionally now for 40 years.
40 years, that's an awful long time. And have you been at the USGS in Menlo Park the entire time?
Well, my first 12 years professionally, I worked for a consulting company in Oakland and San Francisco, and that was the job that really brought me from New York to California, through Alaska and then Nicaragua. And we finally settled out here in the East Bay. And I've been with the U.S. Geological Survey now for 30 years. So been doing this for a long time. I've had the opportunity to really look at active faults and earthquakes around the world in some very interesting and remote places. And I'm really happy to share whatever experience I've developed, during that period of time.
TruthFunders Radio, the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free. You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic. You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
And welcome back to TruthFunders Radio. It is Wednesday, and it is 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, or 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Wednesday, May 6th, 2015, and you are listening to TruthFunders Radio. I am Mark Schwartz, CEO of TruthFunders Radio. Art is currently unavailable, but somewhere. And today our guest is Dr. David Schwartz from the United States Geological Survey. And we were in the middle of our conversation. Suddenly it cut out, and technology has a way of doing that sometimes, so we apologize. Of course, MJ jumped in the mix and threw on the commercials. So thank you guys for staying put and listening, because I guarantee this is going to be a very fascinating, interesting learning experience today. So David, right before I disappeared, you were talking about your love and your interest in geology, and that you have worked at the USGS for 40 years. And before that, you said you were working where?
Well, I worked at a consulting company for 12 years, and now I've been at the USGS for 30 years. So actually, I've been doing this stuff professionally for about 42 years. And I've learned a lot about earthquakes, and I've also learned that there's a lot we really don't know yet.
And that's something to talk about, the stuff that we don't know yet, because I know a lot of our listeners are really interested in that. When it comes to the study of geology, are there things out there that people, I guess, that you have not had a chance to try that you're very curious about? Or is a lot of the research pretty straightforward, and has it changed and evolved over the past 40 years that you've seen?
Oh, it's really changed and evolved. When I started doing this work, people had a lot of questions about faults and how faults worked and how often they moved and how large past earthquakes were on faults and how large future earthquakes would be. And I sort of got in at the beginning of the science that we call, Paleoseismology. That's like paleontology. It's instead of the study of past or fossil animals, it's a study of fossil earthquakes. So we now are able to go to a fault, like the San Andreas Fault or the Hayward Fault, and we can excavate with a backhoe, we can excavate a trench across the fault. And that trench might be 9 feet or 12 feet or 15 feet deep. And we put in shores, hydraulic shores or jacks to keep the walls from collapsing, because the last thing you want is to be in a trench and have it collapse on you.
Oof.
And the top of the trench is today, and as you look down the wall of the trench, you see different layers. And as you're going down deeper and deeper, you're going back into time. And when a large earthquake occurs, it generally breaks to the Earth's surface. And if it's in the right place, that breakage can then be buried, say by a stream bringing in sand and depositing it over the rupture at the surface. And it gets preserved, and it's like a fossil. And then another earthquake occurs and it breaks up to the new ground surface. And this process keeps repeating. Well, we can see this process in a trench, and using dating techniques like carbon-14, we can date little pieces of charcoal or seeds or pieces of wood or pieces of bone, it can give us the age of that earthquake within 10 or 20 or 30 years. So we now have the ability to work out the history of the past earthquakes on large faults. And we use that past history to say something about what's going to happen in the future. 40 years ago, this was just beginning. In the past 40 years, we made incredible progress in different techniques for dating, in different approaches for imaging the fall. So we've really, really come a long way, and we're using this information really to help develop building codes to make stronger buildings, to say how strong the ground shaking is going to be in different places. And it's really been fabulous for me personally to be involved in watching all this progress and watching these changes. And I feel like an old guy now. And there are young scientists coming into the field that can do things technologically that just leave me way behind.
So yeah, a lot of people have called you the Indiana Jones of geology. Is that something that you would agree with?
Well, I don't know if I would go that far, but I have had the opportunity to study some really interesting faults in isolated and remote places. I've been to Mongolia 5 times to study the faults that produced the great 1957 Gobi Altai earthquake. That's in the northern Gobi Desert,
and that was the largest earthquake in the Western Hemisphere. Is that correct?
No, it was big. It was a magnitude 7.8 or 7.9, and then I've been to northern Mongolia, just south of the Siberian border, to look at a fault called the Bolnai Fault, which in 1905 produced a magnitude 8.1 earthquake, and it moved the ground 25 feet sideways over a distance of about 300 miles.
So that's something that I want to touch on too. For people out there who aren't familiar with geology, when it comes to, I want to talk about some of the myths. So what exactly, when you're building a trench or when you're digging a trench, a lot of people think that the ground opens up and that there's this wide gap, and you go down into that crack and you're able to see what's been going on and go through time and see all the different changes. But is it more along the lines of you actually dig the trench and everybody digs the trench and they're able to walk down and see what it is? It's not that the earth actually opens up and you guys walk directly in.
When we excavate a trench, we generally do it with if we can, with a big backhoe that will dig a very straight and straight-sided exposure of the fault for us. When we're in places like Mongolia, we don't have backhoes, and so we do it by hand. But that's just an excavation. There is a real myth, and I think it's been generated by Hollywood, that when you have a big earthquake on a fault, somehow the ground just splits apart and buildings topple in, and, dinosaurs jump out, and all these crazy things happen. But what people should really think about are these faults that I'm talking about and that we worry about, because when a fault moves, it releases stress, and that produces the earthquake, the shaking. These faults are simply cracks in the Earth's crust, and they extend from the surface down 6 or 7 or 8 miles. And it's because they're so narrow that we can actually study them, expose them. But this idea that you have these great fissures opening up and things falling in, that's not the way it works. And I happened to catch there's a new movie coming out in May called San Andreas.
Yes.
And I caught the trailer to that, and I was just laughing hysterically because they show this huge fissure opening up as the fault is rupturing. And I'm sure they're going to have half of California sliding into the Pacific Ocean. And then they had big buildings, high-rise steel structures just breaking in half and falling over. And that will not happen really in a modern city. But more importantly, the fault will not do what they show. I'm really looking forward to seeing the movie and having a good time. And I know that most of what they have in there is not true, and it's not the way things work.
So, and that brings up a good point. And I can get back to entertainment and earthquakes, and I think we should circle back to that later because that's always a fun topic. But specifically, California falling into the ocean. Now, I've gone on a lot of different news articles, and whenever there's a news article about an earthquake, and I guess I'm sensitive because I live in California, and a lot of people, listening to the show, there's probably several people that live in California, and when we live here, we feel earthquakes. They're 2.0s, they're 4.0s, they're sometimes 5.0s, and sometimes they give a good jolt, but you learn to live with it, and it's just, part of the natural surroundings, and we're not too afraid. At least the people aren't afraid who weren't in some of the bigger ones. Like, I was in the Loma Prieta earthquake when I was a young child. A lot of people have stories about that. But this idea that I always see in these stories, there's always people writing, "Oh, I can't wait till California falls into the ocean. Oh, California is going to fall into the ocean. Arizona is beachfront property," and it's kind of a joke. But I have the fear that people actually think that, or that actually might happen. So alleviate my fears.
Well, tomorrow, California is probably just going to fall into the ocean. No, in all seriousness, I think that comes from the fact that the San Andreas fault system extends through all of the state, and it goes from the Gulf of California on the south all the way up to near the Oregon border. And there's the main San Andreas fault, which produced the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and a big earthquake in Southern California in 1857. And there are all of the secondary or subsidiary faults that are parallel to it. So there is a big fault zone that runs through the whole central part of California. And the eastern part of the state is moving to the south. And the western part, which is the Pacific Plate, the eastern part's the North American Plate. The Pacific Plate is moving northward. And they're doing this at about, on average, 2 inches a year. You can't really see that, but when there are earthquakes, the ground shifts, and over time, one side is moving relative to the other. So if we wait around 6 or 7 or 8 million years, Los Angeles will be close to San Francisco. But that's really not a worry.
They wouldn't need the bullet train then that they're building.
You wouldn't need a bullet train, no. So this is really not a concern of ours in the short term. It is a long-term process. It's part of what we call plate tectonics. And when we look around the planet, there are different plates moving in different directions at different rates. And the boundaries between these different plates are big fault zones that produce earthquakes.
Now, what is a plate? Like, can you explain plate and what that means? Or what is a plate and how many there might be?
There are 7 or 8 major plates that sit on Earth: the Pacific Plate, the North American Plate. So if you were to take a look at a globe and look at the Pacific Ocean, and you look at the boundary between the Pacific Ocean and South America, Pacific Ocean and North America, Pacific Ocean and Alaska, Pacific Ocean and Asia. That area within that boundary is the Pacific Plate, and that's a big piece of crust and what we call lithosphere. And these plates are being driven by what we call convection cells. This is movement in the deeper part of the Earth where material is flowing and circulating, and this circulation drives the thinner crust up on top. And over time, these plates move around. At one time, there was one single supercontinent called Gondwanaland, and over time, it broke up, and these currents within the Earth just moved the broken parts around into their present position. And in terms of earthquakes in the United States, the western part of the continent is the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. And so in California, we have a major part of the boundary, and the plates move sideways. And we call these strike-slip faults. If you move from California and you go a little bit to the east into Nevada and Utah and Montana and Wyoming, that's also part of the boundary, but there the crust is being pulled apart and the faulting is different. So if you love skiing and you like to go to the Wasatch Mountains, that's great. The Wasatch Mountains are there, and they're 10, 11,000 feet high because they're being pushed up by a different type of fault. And you go further to the east and you get into the Rocky Mountains and it gets quieter. And then you get into the central and eastern U.S. And overall, that's still part of the North American Plate, but it's a very quiet part, except for what we call the New Madrid seismic zone, which runs through Missouri and Tennessee. And
so what are the quiet states? Just two or three, the quietest earthquake states, because there's
Florida.
A lot of people that say that that fracking is going on, and that's what is causing some of the earthquakes in these places that never before had earthquakes.
Well, this is true. This is the real issue right now. It's both a scientific issue, and it's a political issue, and it's an economic issue. There is fracking or hydrofracturing where companies are trying to get natural gas out of certain rock formations, and they pump in fluids and they break the rock, and they create fractures to allow oil and gas to flow, and they capture that. And they've been doing this for a long time. There is wastewater associated with the whole process, and that gets pumped back into the ground. And it's this wastewater that seems to be affecting the rocks and the stress. And we've known since the 1970s that if you pump fluids into the ground, the result of that will be, in places, the production of small earthquakes. You change the local stress. And so these earthquakes in Oklahoma and Texas and Pennsylvania and other places where they're doing a lot of fracking for oil and gas, they're also producing these moderate earthquakes. And so far, most of these earthquakes have been on the small side. They've been in the magnitude 3 and 4 range. And the concern is that you're going to change the local stress enough that somehow you're going to set off a magnitude 6 or a 6.5.
And is that possible?
Yes, it's possible. We haven't seen an earthquake of that size generated by the fracking process. But there is concern that this can happen. And if you're in California, building codes have been such that new buildings, have really been constructed with earthquake standards in mind.
Sure.
But in many parts of the country, there are no earthquake standards. So in Texas, they don't really care about earthquakes in their building codes. In Pennsylvania, they don't care. In Oklahoma, they don't have it. So these places are all very, very vulnerable to strong shaking. So if you get a 6.5, which would do some damage in California, but would be more of a big topic of discussion, in another part of the country, it could do significant damage. So it is an issue, and there's a lot of discussion about that right now.
So you had a sort of, I'm not necessarily veering off topic, but you had a really big study that was released, and it was back in the late 90s, that there was a good chance that the big one was going to hit San Francisco within the next 20 or 25 years. It was can you give me the actual data for that? It was a 60% chance or something around there.
Yeah, we started a study in 1999, and we had an early version, and then we released a major study in 2003, and we were looking at the probability of future earthquakes on the faults in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we estimated at that time that in the next 30 years, there was a 62% chance of a magnitude 6.7 or larger on one of the primary Bay Area faults. And then that work was redone as part of a California-wide study in 2008, and they changed the probability to 63%. And then last year, another study came out, and the probability went up to 72%. So however you look at it, whatever we've done with different approaches and different methods, we've come up with this kind of 2 out of 3 chance that in the next 30 years, one of the big faults in the Bay Area will have a large earthquake. And a real concern is the Hayward Fault.
Right. And that was a big study, right, when that was released, because it affected or could have affected the value of houses in the Bay Area.
Well,
go ahead.
I think that it didn't really have an impact on the housing market, and very little seems to actually have an impact on the housing market, the way prices continue to go up. But what we were trying to do was to just make people aware of what the hazard was so that they could prepare. And that's a major motivation for a lot of what we do, because we can't predict earthquakes. It'd be nice to say, okay, Mark, at Sunday afternoon at 2:53 and 25 seconds, there's going to be a magnitude 7.1 earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. We can't do that.
Right.
But what we can do in everything we've learned in the last 40 years is to be able to come up with information on how we think faults work on average from this geological work we've done. And we use those averages to try and say something about average behavior in the future. And these earthquake probabilities have become very important, and they're now used by the insurance companies in California to help set insurance rates. And they give people an idea just how potentially dangerous a region is. And
so I have to ask then, just for this particular audience, because I know that they care about this, when you're doing a study like that and you're going to release it and it's going to potentially affect things, it could potentially affect house values, and in this case it didn't necessarily, but do you come out with that, do you come out with that study right away and let everybody know instantly, or is that something that you guys do you hold it in and wait till it's the right time to release it, or wait until all the science is perfectly sound and then release it? What's the sort of okay, we need to let the public know about this, or can they view it the whole time?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing is to really try and get the science as sound as we can make it. And one of the things we've tried to do is to incorporate as much uncertainty, because there's a huge amount of uncertainty in how the Earth works. And when that science is ready, we put it together, and we'll have a general release. We generally don't let little bits and pieces out ahead of time, but we'll have a press conference. We'll have the scientific report that comes out. We'll have popular versions of that so that the general public can understand what we've done. And we try and disseminate the information, at different levels to different groups. But it's generally done at one time once we think the science is as sound as we can make it at the moment.
That's great. Thank you. And I want to get back. Gosh, there's so many questions. I'm just trying to jump around because there's so much information and we have such a short amount of time. Regarding the big quake, so there's the 62% chance, or the 63%, or potentially the 70% chance that the big one will hit within the next 30 years. Is there anything?
A big one.
A big one. A big one. Thank you for correcting me. Is there anything that we could do to offset that, like to release the pressure? I know a lot of people talk about if you can release the pressure in a certain way, then there will be less earthquakes. Is that true, or is there some way to do that?
That's a great urban myth. People say, "Oh, there have been a bunch of small earthquakes," so that's really good because it's released the stress for the big one. But that's not the case. When we have a lot of these smaller earthquakes in general, like since last Sunday, close to where I live in the East Bay, the Concord Fault has produced 17 or 18 small earthquakes. And so people have raised that issue. Does this mean that the big one on the Concord Fault has a smaller chance of occurring? And the answer is no. These small earthquakes are just an indication that the level of stress in the Earth's crust is high, and small little faults, little patches, weak patches, sitting at 5-6 miles below the surface, just decide they've been tweaked and they move a little bit. In terms of doing anything technically to somehow release stress in a broad area so that a big earthquake like 1906 or the 1868 Hayward earthquake, doesn't happen. There's nothing technical at all we can do to try and release the stress.
So no fracking in certain areas, that won't make a difference?
No, and again, the hydrofracking, because they pump water back into the ground, it changes the stress and it produces, these small earthquakes. But that doesn't release stress for something larger. So the whole idea of releasing stress somehow to put off the big one, it's a great question, and maybe that's a great movie that somebody wants to star in. But right now, scientifically, it's something that we can't do.
So, and talking about movies, Dante's Peak. What was your thought about Dante's Peak?
Well, that was really about volcanoes, and a friend of mine at the USGS was the consultant on that, and I think they actually did a pretty good job. They made a geologist the hero, good-looking guy, and so you can't really complain. I think the only problem was he had some sort of a vehicle that simply was able to ride on everything, and I wouldn't mind having that vehicle myself for field work.
I would take a DeLorean from Back to the Future any day myself. That's my that's my dream car right there. Okay, well, this is all fantastic. Now, there's a couple of other questions that I have regarding new systems that the USGS is putting into place. So I've heard too that there's a new warning system that's happening, and you said that you can't predict earthquakes. Now, I know that there's people out there who say that they've predicted earthquakes, or that they've done mass predictions over it, and I can't think of any names right now. So if anybody in the chat room knows of any names, feel free to write them. And also, we will be taking calls today with David. Is that all right with you, David, if we take calls a little later in the show?
Sure, that'd be great.
Great. So we will be doing that after the next break. So get ready. I'll give you the phone number, or you can ask them in the chat room. But we would love to hear your voice, so go ahead and call in then. But there is a new warning system that's taking place. And you said earlier that people can't predict earthquakes. You can't call me up and say, hey, Mark, there's going to be an earthquake in 3 hours, so prepare yourself. So what is this new warning system, and how does that exactly work?
Okay, it's called the Earthquake Early Warning, and it's actually a system, or this is a variation of a system that's being used in other parts of the world, actually in Japan, in Mexico City, in some locations in Europe. And when an earthquake happens, the Earth's crust moves, it snaps. If you push your fingers together, there's friction there, and you keep pushing, and you snap, and you hear the snap, and your fingers have slid. Well, the Earth does the same thing, and one part slides past the other. It snaps, it releases stress, and that vibrates out, and that causes the Earth to move. And there are different kinds of waves. And the first wave is called the P wave, and it moves the Earth back and forth, and it moves very fast. And it's followed by a slower wave called an S wave that moves the crust up and down. And sometimes people who have felt earthquakes will say, oh, I felt things kind of move sideways, and then I felt a pop underneath. Those are the two different kinds of earthquake waves coming in. And so they've developed a way of analyzing this, where all of the seismographs that are set around, particularly in California, detect the P wave as it starts from the fault when the earthquake occurs. And based on where it's detected and how quickly it's detected, it can estimate how large the earthquake is going to be and how long it will take the S wave, which does most of the damage, to arrive at different places. So, for instance, if you live in San Francisco and an earthquake starts on the San Andreas Fault at a place called Point Reyes, which is maybe 100 miles to the north, and the earthquake sort of moves towards San Francisco. With this system, you might have 20, 25, 30 seconds of warning that strong shaking is coming. And that'll give, it's already being used by the Bay Area Rapid Transit system, the BART system.
Sure.
So it automatically shuts down. It when it's in school, you're going to have this on your smartphone. And what you're going to hear, I've seen the beta versions on computers. Suddenly you'll hear out of nowhere, it'll say earthquake, 17, 16, 15, 14, earthquake, 12, 11, 10. It'll actually count down the seconds until you feel that strong, really strong shaking coming in. It'll be in schools, so kids will be able
that'll
to
give
get under
people
their desks.
just enough time to get under their desk or run outside or do what
Exactly.
they need to do. Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
incredible.
Think of it in hospitals. Just before the surgeon is going to put a scalpel into you, he hears this and he stops. I mean, there are so many practical uses. It's not going to help everybody everywhere. If the earthquake is right below you, it's not going to give you any warning time. But it really will have, I think, a positive effect, not only in California, but throughout the U.S.
So how far away would you have to be? You said if it's right underneath you, you don't have a shot. It's just going to go. Is
So
that
if you're 20 miles, 30 miles, 40 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake, you get time. San Francisco was about 30 miles from Napa when they had an earthquake last September, and this system would have given people 10, 12 seconds of warning in San Francisco. But again, if you start to train to respond to these warnings, then you know what to do. And I think down the road, it's just going to be a marvelous improvement.
and so another warning sign that a lot of people say that they've experienced in the past is that their animals tell them when an earthquake is coming, or their animals start to act funny when there's an earthquake. Is there any correlation, or have there been studies done with that?
Well,
I mean, it's a myth for a reason, right? So maybe things have happened in the past. What do you know about that type of activity?
well, in general, I mean, I think that sort of relying on animal behavior, you'll really be fooled.
Yeah,
But there are
my dog, he acts crazy all the time. So I don't think he could be like Lassie and tell me,
but there
that someone's stuck in a well or that an earthquake is coming. He just
but
barks
there
for food.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of cases though where you just have to say, well, maybe there could be something there. And I can remember after the Loma Prieta earthquake in 1989, I was working up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and I was talking to this rancher who had horses, and she said that about a half an hour before the earthquake, one particular mare who was, always completely calm, just got incredibly excited, and they couldn't calm her down. And then, 25 minutes later, the earthquake occurred. Now, she thinks the mare sensed something, and maybe she did. When rocks start to break, when the fault starts to move, minerals in rocks break. And rocks have, minerals like quartz have electrical properties, so maybe they give off some sort of electrical current. There may be sound, because there is sound associated with some earthquakes, and it may occur, at a level that we can't hear, but certain animals can hear it. So I wouldn't say 100% that there's nothing to, animals sometimes sensing some sort of changes, but overall, animal behavior is no guide to when an earthquake is going to occur. There was a geologist in the Bay Area who used to predict earthquakes based on reports in the newspaper of people's pets disappearing. Well, my cat ran off, means we're going to have a big earthquake. It doesn't work that way.
So, and is there? It's really nice to hear you talk about this, because, I feel, especially this community, the paranormal community, feels that scientists need to be open and listen to all that's around them, because you never know what is affecting what. And by the things that you're talking about now, I mean, it's not like it's a yes or no answer. It's because, we don't know. And so it's really nice to hear that coming from you. Is there, is there a reason that the USGS would not study that type of animal behavior, or is it just purely because it really does not have an effect, or have they studied it?
They did. I mean, they did at one time. There were early studies on animal behavior and, variety of statistical analyses, and, it just didn't go anywhere. So,
sure.
Particularly in the early days of the earthquake hazards program in the early 1970s. I mean, a lot of these things were looked at, but they didn't lead to anything really positive, and more important things were put on the table. And there's only a certain amount of money and resources and people to do this kind of work.
And I think that's a really big thing to mention. Now, we're about to go on a break in 1 minute. And when we come back from the break, we're going to start taking questions from the audience. So please, people, feel free to call in. I will give that number out after the break. I also have a question for you from someone that I would love your answer to. And it's about solar flares and magnetic storms and space weather and that sort of, what impact does that have on earthquakes? So we'll talk about that after the break. But one thing that I want to hit on is just what you said. I think that the world thinks that there's a whole lot of money, and we should know everything, and we should be able to test everything and have the answers everywhere. But the USGS, it's one of the places that it has, I guess, less money than other government operations. Is that true? So it makes it harder, and you have to delegate what it is you're actually going to study. They don't just give you tons of money to do these type of tests.
I wish they did give us tons of money. No, budgets have become very tight and very restricted. And there are a lot of things we could do, a lot of additional work if we had the funds.
I'm sorry, but David, we're going to have to go ahead and cut to break right now, so we can pick that up as soon as we get back. You're listening to Inception Radio and Truth Funders on the Inception Radio Network. You can download their podcast. You can download you can listen to Inception Radio on Roku, on your computer. You can download the app. It's an awesome app. I listen to it all the time. So we're going to go ahead and cut to break, and we'll see you on the other side.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free. You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
Listeners, this is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.
Hi, we're back. You're listening to TruthFunders Radio. This is Mark Schwartz, CEO of TruthFunders. And on the phone today, we have Dr. David Schwartz from the United States Geological Survey. He's been talking about earthquakes, earthquake myths, earthquake legends, and the big ones that are happening. So now is the part of the show where we are going to take calls from the public. So if you get this, if you're listening live, feel free to call in. Our telephone number is 888-919-2355, and it is Wednesday, May 6th, 2015, and you can go ahead and call in at 888-919-2355. So now there's a couple of questions that are coming in. Some of them you might think are silly, or some of them you might not want to answer, or you don't know the answer to, but I'm just going to go ahead and read them out. So feel free to answer them as best as you can. So this one, I think you might find it a little bit interesting, David. I'm just scrolling down the chat room right here. But it is... Question from Sky33. Does the guest feel that there is any correlation in sightings of UFOs and earthquakes?
I can be very, very brief with that, and the answer is this. The answer is no.
All right, good answer. Okay, and then let's see what else here. We have, scrolling down the platform here. So do solar flares, magnetic storms, and space weather have an impact on earthquakes?
You know, that's an interesting question, and it has been discussed and debated. I think that the prevailing idea is that there really is no impact on earthquakes. Earthquakes occur all the times. There is a lot of variability in the occurrence of solar flares and magnetic storms. And again, there's been some statistical work done on the timing of these relative to the occurrence of large earthquakes. And people can't really find a very strong correlation. It's the same thing with earth tides. People have looked at the relationship of tides to earthquakes. Of course, tides.
Who has done some of these studies?
I can't. These are mostly university scientists, And you can go online, and I think you can probably, the listeners can Google, solar flares and earthquakes, and really be brought to the list of references that, have some of this technical information in them.
All right, great. And let's see some other myths that we have. Some people think that the Earth is hollow. There are people out there, Columbus once thought that the Earth was, or people thought that the Earth was flat, and Columbus went to go sail out and prove that that was wrong. There are people, as silly as it sounds, to mainstream science, that think that the Earth is hollow. So as a geologist, and you've been studying this stuff for 40 years, do you know what the core of the Earth is made of, or what is the core of, what generates the core of the Earth? What's down there?
The different layers within the Earth, the crust, the mantle, the core, all developed as the Earth initially formed, and it's a core of basically iron, nickel, and we know it's not hollow because simply by the way we can record and see seismic waves from earthquakes. Earthquakes are just a natural source of looking at what seismic waves do, and some travel around the Earth on the surface, and other waves travel through the Earth, and they travel at different speeds and different material. And because of this, we know that the Earth is layered and fundamentally, not hollow, all the way through. So I think it's an interesting idea. If you only have the surface to look at, maybe you could find a little trapdoor somewhere and drop through to the other side. But we simply know
it's like Felix the Cat's magical bag of tricks. You can jump in and. So here's another question, and this is from Michael. He asks, how much do land tide as opposed to ocean tides affect stresses in the plates?
I'm not quite sure what he means by land tides.
Or how about just ocean tides?
Well, people have really looked at the relationship of tides, of the moon, lunar effects on earthquakes, because tides do result in stress changes. And again, I couldn't say that there is no relationship, and sometimes a certain tide, winds up just increasing stress on a fault in such a way that it pops off. But there is no major statistical relationship between high tides, low tides, with earthquake activity. And the earthquake remember, most of the earthquakes that we're concerned about start at 6, 7, 8 miles below the surface. And those are for earthquakes that occur on faults like the San Andreas Fault. If you look around the Pacific in what we call subduction zones, around the Ring of Fire.
And what is the Ring of Fire for those people who don't know?
It's the area around the outside of the Pacific Ocean where the material in the ocean, the oceanic plate, is diving beneath the continents, and the sliding of the oceanic plate against the continental plate produces large earthquakes in features called subduction zones. And when the crust gets down to a certain depth, the temperature is high enough, the pressure is great enough that it melts, and that melt works its way up to the surface to become the line of volcanoes. So you look along, again, the Pacific coast of South America, up through Central America, North America, Alaska, you have all of these volcanoes, and that's where the ocean is colliding with the continent and is diving down. And those are the places on the planet that produce the largest earthquakes. So Chile in 1960, there was a magnitude 9.5. The Alaska earthquake in 1964, was like a 9.3. We just had that earthquake in Japan, was a magnitude 9. The Sumatra earthquake in a few years ago was a 9.1. So these subduction zones are places where really large earthquakes occur. And what I wanted to point out there, we were talking about tide changes. Those start at maybe 30 or 40 or 50 miles below the surface. And so the tide changes are much more superficial and just don't seem to influence the places where these large earthquakes actually start.
Is there a particular area that that all the earthquakes happen more so than another area?
Well, I think I mentioned during the course of the discussion that, there are parts of the Earth where plate movement is faster than other parts, and activity occurs at a higher rate. So again, around the Circum-Pacific, that's probably the most dangerous earthquake area in the world. In terms of frequency, but we can look around at what just happened last week in Nepal. So that's an area where India, the continent of India, is colliding with Asia, and it's pushing down below Asia. And as a result, that movement is occurring on a whole series of faults, and there are different kind of fault. They're called thrust faults, and the Himalayas are going up. That's why Mount Everest is there, and that's an area where magnitude 7.8, magnitude 8.3 earthquakes occur, and they occur with great frequency in just in hundreds of years. But I'd have to say, in terms of urbanized areas, California probably is the most active urbanized region, in the world. You have other places like the North Anatolia Fault in Turkey, which is similar to the San Andreas Fault. So there are very active areas, but California, we can claim to be number one.
All right. I will take that title. One last question. Well, actually, we have two last questions. One that popped up here is, every attempt to show that solar activity triggers earthquakes has focused on solar flares, sunspots, or geomagnetic activity. Let's see. And current observations, are there... I'm going to have to reread this. I will bring this up later on, or I will send it to you, and you can answer it off air, and I can let people know. But
sure.
Would you be willing to discuss Yeah, I guess we touched on space weather a little bit, so I'm not sure I understand this question, and I'd have to get it back to you. So,
all right.
So okay, and now we're getting to the end of the show. I want to thank everybody so much. We're really sorry. I see in the chat room you guys were really in the middle of the show, and it was super exciting, and you were into it, and suddenly it cut out. Once again, we apologize for that. We'll look into it and see what happens. It's probably Skype or the crazy Skype spies listening to us somewhere, not wanting us to spread the truth about geology to the world. But David, before we leave here today, what is your favorite geological movie of all time? Hands down. What would you recommend to everybody listening to go see that does a good job of explaining earthquakes, or at least is a fun kick in the pants about earthquakes?
I think my favorite sort of geology movie and earthquake movie is Earthquake, which was made in 1974. At the time it was released, they had a process called surround sound. So when you were in a movie theater, they had these huge bass speakers. And when they had the earthquake, the speakers would rumble and you'd feel the theater kind of shake. So they tried to make you feel like you were part of the movie. And in some ways, it's one of the best bad movies ever made. But I think they did a great job, and this was 1974, special effects, of showing what an earthquake was like in an urban area. It's really good. So I think if people want to have a fun time, the science is not bad. They had some really good geological consultants at the time. Help with them. It's got an amazing cast of people who, most of whom have passed on. But it's a great movie, Earthquake, 1974. Find it somewhere, stream it, rent it, whatever. It's worth a watch.
Excellent. Well, hey, thank you so much. I want to thank you, Dr. David Schwartz from the United States Geological Survey. Thank you for coming on the show. I know it's a little bit of a different show. Rather, it's not 60 Minutes. It's TruthFunders Radio, but we really appreciate it. I think it's just important to let people know the myths, like what is real and what is not, and what is real science and what is not. It's just important for everyone in the listening public to know. So I really, once again, want to thank you so much, and we will talk to you soon. Don't be a stranger to the show.
That sounds great. I'll listen to the next one. Thanks a lot for having me.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
So, bye-bye. All right, everybody. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. One thing that I didn't get a chance to ask David was a question from some of you might know him as a Suspicious Observer, and he sent me a really great question, but we kind of touched a little bit about it, talking about space weather, and he's fantastic too. His name is, if you haven't been to his website, you could go to YouTube and you could go to Suspicious Observer. And his name is Ben, fantastic guy. We're going to get him on the show for next week, and he's going to talk a little bit about the other side of the coin. So we talked to David Schwartz today, and we talked about myths, and we talked about real science and earthquakes and how it works. And now we're going to go to another division, which is, space. Do solar flares affect Earth and geology? And I didn't want to have them both on the same show because I think that there's different science or different things going on here, and I want to hear both sides and both opinions and give them both their own amount of time to talk about all this stuff. And let you, as an informed listener, make a decision. So we'll be doing that next time. So until next time, you can download the Inception Radio app. It's fantastic. Go ahead and go to the iTunes store and download it. You can also go to Roku and listen to the Roku channel. Download the Inception Radio Network Roku channel. You can stream online. Go ahead. You know what? Do us a favor. Log in. Become one of the members. It's totally free. You can log into Inception Radio. You could download all of our old or stream all of TruthFunders' old radio shows. When Art's here, we have a total ball. We're kicking the pants. We talk about stuff from Mad Magazine and Star Wars and 80s movies to deep stuff, like paranormal things to real science. I mean, we're all over the board. It's a really fun show. So we'd love for you guys to join us. We'd love for you to call in too. Don't be a stranger. So go ahead, call in next time and tune in next time to TruthFunders Radio. It is every Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks so much, and we will talk to you next week. Have a good one.
TruthFunders Radio on the Inception Radio Network.